Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me here anyway. Thank you.
So, what's the latest with Sentient Rights Ireland then, Denis?
Well, where we're at now is we're just coming into completing registration. That means we'll be recognised as an official political party in Ireland, and we'll be able to compete in elections with our logo and get the message out. We ourselves don't have great political ambitions. That was never the case. Politics was always and ever just another platform to get the message out, outreach and education about the plight of animals in Ireland, and work towards a plant-based society. That is our goal. Certainly, animal rights, not animal welfare, and that's what we're about, and that's our message. So, in managing expectations in terms of electoral success, we're not actually chasing that at this stage. We would aim to make an impact in terms of getting the message out and getting our own name recognized, and what it stands for is more important than actually anything else, and to bring to the attention of people the need to switch to a plant-based society, and how it can be done and how it can be achieved. It's very workable, and the need for animal rights as opposed to animal welfare. If we identify what the issue is, I would say it's speciesism. We don't see farmers per se as being the enemy. We need them as a solution. We need them to come forward and move, transition to a plant-based farming system in the veganic mode. That is what we're aiming for. To that end, in January, we have Jimmy Videle, coming in. He's a veganic grower based in Quebec. He's going to give us a talk on webinars. Webinars are a tool we have used for the last 2 years, in which we have brought in people like yourself to give us a talk on their expertise and to help us realize what the situation is in different areas: animal rights, vegan nutrition, the possibilities for new types of activism, which we feel is very important. I'm not here to disparage any type of activism. Everything is valid, everything has its place, but we're looking to do something innovative, something new. And if I may, we see speciesism as a plinth where the daily grind, and we all see it, by the time you've had your breakfast, you've had enough of what's happening out there anyway. It's really chaos and mayhem. And I feel a lot of the time we're reacting to situations when what we're trying to do is to develop a plan to go on the offensive with our story, with our game. And that's what we're aiming to do. And I think there's, if we look at what's supporting speciesism, we see it's the pillars of big ag, big animal agriculture, big oil as part of the matrix as well. Finance, big finance. Where is the investment coming from into these farming, into the big agricultural scheme of things? We know from the webinar that we got from Jordi Massimiana that ethical vegan, he brought people to court on that, his employers, because they were not investing ethically, and he won the case. I think that opens up a whole new sphere of activism that we should, as vegans, ethical vegans, follow up on. The other place is big pharma and the biotech industry. That is another plinth, another pillar that is holding up the plinth of speciesism. And then we have betting. I think betting is the one that gets away most often and is the one that really needs to be curbed. It's what's fueling horse racing. It's what's fueling greyhound racing. But the main thing is animal farming and trying to get a switch going, a transition, which is already underway in many countries and in Ireland, away from animal farming to a more gentler type of, tillage in the veganic mode. So that's where we're at the moment, Roger. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's a lot to chew on already. So,
Yeah.
well, first of all, you got a question from Deb. Didn't catch it, but Sentient Rights Island, a recognised political party in Ireland. Is it that now, or is it still?
No, we're still in the making. You need to have so many signatures. We're looking for 100 signatures. That is people with um, proof of ID and proof of address, and we send that to an auditor. They certify that, and then that certification plus the application goes into Leinster House. That's the administration that runs the country. And then we get our certificate back to say that we are a de facto political party. And then that means we will be able to contest elections with our logo and our candidate. And it will also open the door for us in terms of funding and what we can get from Europe, and because we're part of the European Union. And it also means we can get more tools for education and outreach from the grant system for political parties. For ourselves, we don't actually have a political ambition. I'm certainly not a political person, I'm more an administrator. But I feel, and we discussed it at the first meeting we ever had 2 years ago, on what was the best way to proceed. We looked at being a grassroots organisation, we looked at being a single issue organisation, but in the end, there were 6 of us at the meeting. It was small numbers. We decided it would be politics, and politics because it gives you access to the politicians. That's the power structure in any country, in a democratic country. It also gives you access to media. For example, during an election, if there's a round table talk, our candidate will be there. They'll get their 5 minutes to speak. This is in primetime TV. This is a really enviable, and you couldn't pay for it, exposure. We're already beginning to get a bit of traction by sending press releases to every event we do, which now we will, from January on, include our webinars. We do a monthly webinar, which we record. And and yourself, Roger, and Ronnie have been gracious enough and generous enough to come and give us a talk on your form of activism and introduce us to a lot of new stuff. And that's all recorded, and it's all on YouTube, free to view. And we did a box set about that this year. And it's something we put out, and it's there for people to view and to find out what's going on. So we're very happy about that.
Yeah, Paul's asking, how many of the webinars have you had now?
We have close to 38.
All right, very good. Okay.
Yeah,
and that's all on your YouTube channel.
It's all on our YouTube, and it's on the website as well at sentientrightsIreland.ie. Now, there's a bit of a time lag with the website because it takes extra time to load all that up. But and I got a great Christmas present on activism this year. David A. Nibert, who has written the book Animal Rights, Human Rights, Entanglements of Oppression. He's an animal activist operating out of America. He has agreed to do a webinar for us in February. So we're very happy about that, because we want to try and get the message out to activists, the connection between animal rights and human rights. We think that's very important. Okay. And we're also looking to expand on veganic farming, get the message out on that as well.
Okay, well, look, I'm going to bring Ronnie in a second, but just for clarification, sometimes it sounds like you see yourself as a lobby group, and other times a political party. Is it in between, or what's the score?
Well, in terms of the lobbying, politics is about lobbying. I was a climate activist before I was an animal activist. I went vegan in 2017. And I was inspired by people like Greta Thunberg, who were making strides at the time, coming up pre-COVID. And I was still working with them, One Future, who would be connected to Friends of the Earth. And they operate on a constituency basis, and they deal directly with politicians, and they offer training courses. I also worked with Extinction Rebellion here locally. and I've learned from them as well. We're picking up new ways of activism. So the thing about the training days is when we do a campaign, we decide who has the power in that matrix. You know, who can change what we want, who can bring about the change that we want. So invariably, it's politicians, whether it's local or national or international. It has to be a political solution. And I think the main thing that we're trying to do is make people aware. So yeah, lobbying is important. We do outreach certainly to individuals on the high street with our outreach days. We also do outreach through email campaigns to individuals and through groups, both inside the animal complex, that would be other grassroots groups and political parties, and to groups outside the animal complex. For example, the Students' Union of Ireland, the Youth Council of Ireland, the Women's Council of Ireland, major religious organisations. We speak directly to these people and we connect up what's happening to animals with what's happening in society. We all know as vegans the level of violence that has been meted out to animals, but we all also realise the connection between the violence to animals and violence in society. And we make that connection. And we recently wrote to the last 2022, we wrote to the Women's Council of Ireland, and I'm not claiming responsibility for this, but the Minister for Justice, shortly after that, and shortly after we were outside, do you remember we did in 2022, we did the protests or the demonstrations the vigil outside the Department of Justice asking for animals to be recognised as sentient beings. Yeah. Well, the law has been changed now in Ireland that they are now connecting animal abuse with domestic violence. So that has been taken in. It's something along the lines of what happened in Spain, where animals are not regarded as property in a divorce situation, but they're regarded as sentient beings, more like the children in that respect. So these are very small incremental progressions, but they're not the big game. They're not what we're looking for. We're looking for total animal rights. That is our end game, and that's what we are aiming for. Yeah, I do think. Pardon?
Just a small idea that you're just trying to push there.
I do think it's possible. I don't think it's ever been really attacked before. I don't think that the movement have ever gone on the offensive. And I hear people talking about unity within the movement. And we did some research here ourselves on it and our options and possibilities. I think I sent you the document to look at who could we merge with, or if it wasn't a full merger, who could we work with in ad hoc, year by year or event by event basis to bring about that. And it has never been tried. And then you hear other people saying, well, you need unity in the whole movement. There's an awful lot of welfare going on, and there's an awful lot of noise going on, and not so much about rights and not so much money coming into rights. But I feel that is changing with the upsurge in veganism, and certainly with the plant-based treaty, and also because of health reasons and because of climate. There is a huge urgency with climate, and animal activism really hasn't tapped into climate activism. I think there should be a whole connection there between the two. For example, animals are getting hit in 3 different ways with the climate crisis. Number one, animals are farmed animals are caught up in this oppression, close to 100 billion a year now worldwide. And that is part of the emissions problem. That's part of the cause of climate. And as animal farming expands, so too is the wild habitat shrinking. So wildlife is beginning to suffer there as well. And also, what we have to look at, the third part of where animals are suffering is in the cause, is not the cause, but in the result of climate change. For example, floods, droughts, extreme weathers, and extreme weather events. For example, the fires in Australia in 2019, 2020, over 3 billion animals were displaced in Australia, and over 1 billion were killed. So there's a huge attrition rate happening for animals because of climate. And I firmly believe more animal activists should be in their local climate groups, activating for climate and influencing the people who are in there, the environmentalists, the people who are looking for data centers to be, contained better. And I found that here in One Future in Galway, certainly with the people I was working with, they didn't really factor in the animal part of it at all. And animal agriculture really got a buy here in Ireland, even though emissions from animal agriculture in Ireland are twice what the world average are. They were let off the hook. But I've gone back again since, and an environmentalist who I had many a barney with has now gone vegan, and so has another person. So if you're in there, you're going to influence these people. It's, they're in the milieu of what you're saying, because you get your chance to talk, and without having an argument, you get your point across about animals. I believe every environmentalist and climate activist should actually be vegan. I mean, Greta Thunberg is vegan, so there's no reason why everybody else can't be vegan. I think it's a natural thing for a climate activist or an environmentalist to be. It reduces your carbon footprint, food footprint by 75%. It frees up 75% more land going vegan. Everything is right about it as a solution to the climate problem.
Absolutely. So I got a question from Deb. But first of all, Ronnie, I imagine there's a lot for you to agree with there and all that.
Oh yes. I mean, I think politics are very important. While we've got governments who have the ideology that I think probably most, if not all, governments in the world currently have, we're never going to get animal liberation. And really, I think those people need to be replaced. And they need to be replaced as far as possible with people who are actually anti-speciesist, with vegans. We need a lot more vegans elected to government. We need a lot more vegans elected to local authorities, so we can eventually turn things around. So it's us that call the shots at the moment. It's the speciesists that call the shots, which is why it's so difficult to get any measure of animal protection into law. Even the smallest welfarist measures tend to get booted out. Certainly here in the UK. So we need to get a lot more vegans elected to governments, and and obviously there has to be some sort of vehicle for that, and obviously the vehicle for that would be a political party that people would vote for. So I think politics is really important in that way. But we're only going to get that situation when we have a lot more vegans, because obviously the more vegans we have, the more, some of those vegans will want to become politicians. We'll get more vegan politicians, but have more vegans to vote for them. So I'd hope very much that the work that Sentient Rights Ireland is doing includes vegan education, to actually educate people to become vegan, because those are the people that are going to vote their candidates into office. So that's the kind of first thing to say. The other thing that kind of, and this is a very difficult question, and I don't know, the electoral system in Ireland, Denis, is it a first past the post system, or do you have some kind of proportionate representation in the election?
Sorry, yeah. Will I answer?
Yeah.
It's proportional representation, and that proportional representation always helps the small party, the new party. It's a benefit, whereas the first past the post, especially in a country where you have two big parties, like say England or America, where it's two big heavyweights, it's very hard to get your voice in there. And the other thing that helps is if you're like a country like Holland, That's why the Animal Party were able to get a bit of success, early success, right up to and including an MEP, is because of the fractured political party system there. Going right back to the early part of the 20th century, it was a coalition governments in Holland, which was very unusual. That's an unusual thing in the 20th century. Now, in Ireland, right up to and including the 1980s, we had a two-party system here, much like you would have had with the Conservatives and Labour in the UK. So there's a lot of similarities there. But then it fractured in the 90s, and now you have a 2- and 3-party plus some independents that make up a government. So the more that system, that monolithic system of two-party state, two-party government collapses, that then it disintegrates. That makes it easier for smaller voices to get in there and make a difference. And of course, if you could become a signatory to a coalition, even at that, you would really, and get one ministryship, you would really have a great voice at the table. If I may bring in 2 more points, which I had down as my original points, but I'm new to all this. So if we look at the law that we are governed by here in Ireland at the moment in relation to animals, which actually don't relate to animals, even though they talk about animals, because animals aren't mentioned, animals are mentioned, but their rights are completely ignored. The first one is the Lisbon Treaty of 2009. That was the European Union initiative. The UK, well, at that stage, would have been part of the European Union. So the Lisbon Treaty recognised animals as sentient beings. That was a major, major step, and it was heralded as being a major leap forward. But here's what happened, and this is the thing about lobbying, where lobbying is so, so important. All the big industries came in that I mentioned previously, including big betting. And at the last minute, a clause was inserted into the Lisbon Treaty in relation to animals being recognised as sentient beings. And the clause was something like this: notwithstanding cultural traditions in each member state. That meant, for example, it was going to be business as usual, even though now animals are recognised as sentient beings. It's still business as usual. It's still foie gras and hunting in France. It's still bullfighting in Spain. It's still hare coursing here. Everything still goes on. Fox hunting, all going on, and of course animal agriculture. Because while they may recognise other animals as sentient beings, farm animals are always left out of that. They're still referred to as the brute or the beast. Now, following on from that, in Ireland, there was the 2013 Animal Welfare Act, which was really, putting the tighteners on the 2009 Lisbon Treaty. It was a follow-on from that. It was a major act. So it's called the Animal Welfare Act of 2013, but in it there's a huge portion of who can have an animal killed. And this is the horrific part, and this is how animal welfare works to hurt animals as opposed to help animals, and works for the benefit of the oppressor or the abuser. So it says the first person who can have an animal killed with a reason is the owner. So there's animal rights violations straight away. The second person that can have an animal killed are vets, any registered veterinary surgeon. And of course, we know all the vets, most of them consume their own clients anyway. So no animal is safe there. And the third party that can have animals killed is the Minister of the Day for Agriculture. And the Minister for the Day of Agriculture doesn't need any reason to have an animal killed. So this is why they can do a decree for culling if, a couple of chickens get sick on a farm, or if they decide they're going to do some more deer culling. This is how it happens. The Minister for Agriculture it's law by decree. There's no voting, there's nothing. He just says it, and he doesn't even need a reason. So, and this is the thing. These are the keystones or the cornerstones or the tipping points that made me realize there was a huge difference between animal welfare and animal rights, and why I had to be an animal rights person as opposed to an animal welfare person, or a bit of both, mix it up. Because when I started, I had everything in the same bracket. It's just generally I wanted to help animals. I saw it was the 2019 documentary by RTE here in Ireland on running for their lives, on the exposed what was happening in the greyhound industry. That's what made me become an animal activist. But when we look at the welfare actually works against animals, and they're not recognised. I talked to a prominent vet recently online, and he said, well, we can't include animals because they don't understand English. So talk about excuses. The other thing that you mentioned there, Ronnie, was the vegan population, how that's coming in as it is, and I think that's our block, that's our support there. To that end, we have hooked up with Viva. I'm sure you know Viva and Juliet Gilletley in the UK. And in January, we're starting a pilot program here in Galway. We're going to do a vegan outreach day, one day a month, under the auspices of Viva. So we're very happy about that. And if we can get the hang of it and do it well, I've done the training courses, and we're going to have meetings earlier in the new year and get our team ready here in Galway. So if we can get that right, then I don't see any reason why we can't proliferate that all over the country with our people doing it in conjunction with the wonderful Viva. They are a dream to work with. They're a pleasure to work with. It's just so nice. And the great thing is there's a little bit of funding, which makes it painless. So very happy about that. It's a major development we're going to have for the new year.
Very good. Going back to Deb's question then, do you foresee running a Sentient Rights Ireland candidate for an elected office in Ireland?
Yes, that is our number one ambition. In 2024, just next year, there are the local government elections and the European elections in June. They're slated for June. Whether it actually happens in June or not is debatable, but we're hoping to be ready. That's why we're pushing for registration at the moment, and we would aim to have our candidates in there, as many as we can get.
And I was going to ask, on the back of that, you mentioned European, so there's local, European, and national.
Yes.
Presumably the national part of it is the hardest, is it?
The national part comes in 2020, where are we, 2024? 2025 is the national election. That's the election to the Parliament, or the Dáil, as it's called here in Dublin. So that's happening the next year, the following year. So yeah, so that's the. If you're starting off in politics, ideally local government is the place to start and build your base locally. Politics is about local issues. That's the way to do it. And starting off, there have been people who have gone in at national level, constituency level. That is possible too. And we have had a number of independents who have done very well here. And we're also looking around at elected representatives that would have common cause with us and would be, sympathetic towards animals. So we're looking at that angle as well.
I wanted to talk about culture and the movement a little bit, in the sense that it's almost inevitable that when you said that there was this declaration that other animals are sentient beings, it's almost inevitable that the culture of speciesism would try to slide that down into welfare. The real disappointment for me, though, Denis, is the amount of groups, and I think you're probably the only one, or parties that stand outside of this, that have gone along with that and said, well, okay, because they're sentient, they need more welfare. And my position has always been, if you're sentient, then that means rights, not welfare. And so, are you talking to those parties that have gone the welfare way, and do you know why?
We once we get registered, we'll be able to join what's known as the Euro group of animal parties. That's headed up by it's usually people from the Netherlands group, because they're the most advanced, and that will open us up to getting some funding. We'll be able to get funding for outreach and education. We recently did a webinar with our counterparts in New Zealand. It's a new political party there. And there's a lot of similarities between New Zealand and Ireland in that, number one, it's an island state. The population size, the human population size is similar. And also they have a huge agriculture industry like we have here. So a lot of similarities there. We note a lot of the European parties are towards welfarism. You're correct about that, Roger, and we don't like that. And we would be asking them to move towards animal rights. They do that from a populist point of view. That happened to the party in the Animal Welfare Party in the UK, where Richard Debeau had stood back in 2008 in the general election, in 2013, I think it was, or 11 in the European elections, and then bowed out after that. And then the party name changed from rights to welfare. This is always the temptation for people going for election, is they're trying to be popular. And that's, of course, why we get populism in mainstream politics, is because people want to get elected. So they will do whatever people, whatever their clients or whatever their constituents are telling them, rather than what politicians should be doing, which is giving leadership and doing the right thing, as opposed to the popular thing. And of course, animal parties have fallen for that one as well. Well, let's be popular, so we put in a big wide area. For ourselves, we can look at it here. There is a welfare party in Ireland. Now, it took them 4 calendar years to get registered. It looks like, and we very nearly did it in 2 calendar years, but we will certainly do it in the 3rd calendar year. That's all of 2024, next year. And so our ask is animal rights. People know exactly what, and we make no. We don't try to obfuscate on that. We are very clear in our literature when we talk to people initially what we are advocating for, and people respect that. And we know the people we have are good people. The people I work with, I'm so lucky, and I feel so privileged. We have long-term people like yourself, Roger, and Ronnie, who have been active, going right back to the 70s. We have had it here too. The likes of Bernie Wright, these are public figures in their own right. Direct action people, we have rescue people, they go back to the 70s as well. We have people who run sanctuaries, they're with us, they're our members. This is our rank and file people. We have people in the rescue who are still active in rescue, although they're holding positions with us. These are people who are fielding phone calls at 4 o'clock in the morning to save an animal. It could be a dog let loose by the hunt who never bothered looking for the poor dog, or it could be a whale beached on the west coast of Ireland. We get a lot of that going on here. And they will spend days trying to get that poor animal back into the ocean. They're waiting for a high tide to come. So it's a privilege to be working with that kind of grassroots people who have experience. And I'm learning. I'm on a huge learning curve since I started this, and I'm picking up information from everybody, certainly from all walks of life. And it is wonderful. And we have a great team put together. They're really, really dedicated. We're hoping to expand. And one of the people that I rely on really, really much here in Galway is Paul Campbell. You may know him. Paul is a long time vegan activist in Galway and well known in the city. So
never heard of him. Never heard of him. So Debbie's saying honesty in politics. You're breaking the mold here.
I think it's very important that I was really pleased with Denis's answer to what I asked. It's a really big bonus that you've got proportional representation there, because it means that you're sort of free of any hindrance, really, because the problem we have here in the UK, where we've got the first past the post system, is that people very often feel they can't vote for who they really want to vote for, out of fear that will allow the very worst candidate to be elected. So, for instance, if someone really wants to vote for the Green Party, they may well end up voting for the Labour candidate instead, because they see the Labour candidate as the best person to defeat the Conservative. And that's the problem we have here. And that is a problem for any smaller party, and that they can be seen as splitting the vote and, you know, kind of allowing in the worst possible candidates. And so I think over here we very much need some form of PR, you know, transferable vote or something like that, you know, to make real progress with politics. We kind of do very much need that. And it's great to hear that exists already in Ireland, because that makes it so much easier for you, because you don't have to worry about that aspect of it at all, and people can feel free to vote for your party without worrying about, you know, allowing, you know, the most nasty party to be elected.
Yes, it is huge. It is huge, Ronnie. And in Holland, it actually works as well. If you get a lot of votes or get a lot of candidates, that actually can raise your profile as well. Holland is quite different and quite distinct. It's worth actually, if anybody is anyway interested in politics, it's very much worth studying the Holland system and how the Animal Party went about using that to their advantage. It really is strategy, you know, education. The other thing that's happening for us, I have to say, and this is what we feel about ourselves, we're not so much building a political party, we're also building a movement. We're operating in Northern Ireland as well, which is a separate jurisdiction. It's part of the UK. And we go up there to various meetings, and we have some members up there, and we're beginning to form a group, and we would see ourselves contesting elections up there in time. It's a slower build. Politics are quite unique in Northern Ireland. There is no Animal Party there. 2016 was the last time somebody stood there. That's in relation to the Animal Party in the Animal Welfare Party in the UK. They were part of that. But so we felt and we asked the Animal Party in the UK. They didn't respond to us. And so we felt that was open turret, you could go in there. But here's the thing as well, and this is very interesting, and this is why we say it's a movement. We think of ourselves as a movement. We're getting people on our Facebook page, on our social media pages from other countries, especially the UK and the USA. And we are getting membership coming in from the UK. We have membership from Scotland. We have membership from the USA. These are people who have no connection with Ireland, but because they're on our social media and they see what we're saying, they like our positive message, our upbeat message, our message for animal rights, human rights, and climate. They are flocking to us. They are joining. So we have an overseas department as well. We have people in Australia. These are members, paid up members. We have paid up members in the Philippines and several countries in Europe. So this is quite exciting time. So this is in relation to what you were talking about, Roger, about the other parties outside of Ireland that, you know, especially in Europe, which would be the biggest collective of them. We see ourselves building a movement there as well that we can counteract the welfarism there. So this is all part of a bigger picture than, say, contesting an election here this year or next year. So this is a movement. So I think that gives us great hope that people are looking at a Facebook page or, you know, Twitter in Ireland, coming out of Ireland, and that we're sending out a positive message and they like what they're hearing.
Very good. Now, the next question is, have you been fitted for a crown yet? Paul is saying you're going to be crowned as King Denis the First, so. Which is quite good. Actually, Tim points out, I think you mentioned Holland just produced the most far right government in Europe. So there is a lot of there are a lot of problems with the rise of the right all over the world, isn't there? And so,
yeah, it's happening here as well. And I think, you know, an ideology can't be eradicate it, but you can take away the circumstances. And I think one thing that allows the right to rise, and we see it here in Ireland, is when governments and politicians neglect their duty to democracy itself, and start going with populism as opposed to leadership and try to explain things. We see that here with climate. The education to the general public about climate is very, very low, very, very limited. They were able to get the message out about COVID-19, the government, through the media and their own organizations, their own press releases, but they're not doing the same with climate. And this is a major problem. So where you have that vacuum of information, that's where the disinformation moves in. And the disinformation is coming from right-wing sources. And it's obviously anti-climate. It was anti-everything. COVID was a hoax. I know there was a debate within the vegan movement as well. I don't really want to go into that. But all this disinformation is coming from right-wing sources in America. There's no question about that. And it's coming through social media. We had it here. We had, recently violent riots over, it was a stabbing incident outside a school that kicked off there. And it was just anti-emigre. That was basically it. But then it disintegrated even further into just plain old vandalism. So we have to beware. But I think the institution of democracy is a very, very delicate mechanism, and that needs to be guarded.
I think with first past the post, there is a risk that you're going to get a more right-wing government, because that's not with first past the post, with proportionate representation. With first past the post system, you tend to get parties elected that are more towards the centre. Now, it could be argued that the Conservative Party in the UK isn't is much more to the right than the centre, but nevertheless, there are parties that are even far to the right in the UK, further to the right than the Tories, because
would that be Labour, would it? Right?
Well, the Labour to the left of the Tories, but not very much. But it does allow. So there is a danger of that, because some of these smaller parties that can be elected under the PR system, may be more right wing than the major parties. But my point would be that without PR, there is no chance of any party with a more radical stance being elected. And so if we're going to get a party elected that that promotes animal rights, that promotes human rights properly, and that will act properly for the climate, then it's going to be very difficult to get that without PR.
I think you're right. PR is definitely a plus, but the other two things, the major two things that are happening and very much animal activism is part of it, and also it's connected to climate as well. The rise of the right and the rise of the disinformation mill, and we see that with how Trump operates. When he's doing a rally, he'll speak an untruth, and of course that's fodder for the people who were there at the rally. They love to hear this, the way he talks. Then when he's checked about it on the media, he'll say, "Oh well, you kind of misinterpreted what I said. That's not actually what I meant at all." But he has already done the damage, and we see that out of the playbook. And there is a playbook. All the moves are well known to the climate people, the climate movement. They have that well tracked. And there was a classic at COP28 this year in Saudi Arabia, where the president of COP28 was a CEO of a large oil company. And at his first speech of the COP was, he said, science is not saying that fossil fuel is part of the problem. We don't really need to get rid of fossil fuel. So then when he was checked on that the next day, he said, "Oh, well, that's not actually what I meant at all." So that's straight out of the Trump and disinformation playbook. you say the wrong thing, to give the disinformation, and then you retract it the next day. But the damage is already done. That's exactly what he did. And we had the same thing here in Ireland with what's known as the Dublin Declaration some time ago. And these were scientists speaking on behalf of the government policy. It's a group here called Teagasc, which is a government-funded group. It's part of the advisory board for the animal agriculture industry here. And these scientists, qualified scientists, said, regenerative farming using animals. And the other big thing that they're waiting for here, this is the reason why they're not moving towards a plant-based society and they're not, reducing the size of herds, is that they're talking about technology not yet ready or not yet invented, which what they're talking about is carbon capture. And then when they were checked, there was an article in it about in The Guardian in the last few weeks about it. It was totally debunked what they said. And these are professional scientists working within the industry. And you may remember Camilla Persuela, Dr. Camilla Persuela, the webinar that she did for us. She is a food scientist, and she herself used to work for Teagasc until she had her epiphany and became vegan. Now she's working at self-employed as a food scientist, and she advises us. And she recently had an article in a considered article about processed food from a plant-based source. All these guys, these Teagasc scientists, they descended on her page in the comments section, spreading disinformation. They are so afraid of the vegan products. This is why they attack the vegan alternatives. And the reason they're doing it is to take the heat off the processed animal products, which in 2015, the World Health Organization deemed as carcinogenic A1 in the same category as cigarette smoking and asbestos, exposure to asbestos. So that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to deflect from processed meat products like sausages, all the deli products, all the reconstituted stuff, and bacon. When you add up those, they account for about 70% of meat sales. So that's what they're trying to do. And that's why you have some vegan companies who are doing products as opposed to, fruit or veg or legumes. That's why they're having such a difficult time, because in the psyche even of some vegans, there's chemicals in all these products, don't eat them. Whereas Dr. Camilla, who's Camilla, we know her as, she's familiar to us, she says processed food per se is not bad. Certainly you don't want something loaded with sugar, you don't want something loaded with sodium. That's not what you're looking for in your diet. But processed food itself does not lessen the nutrient value of it. So
it is interesting though, Dennis, because we do a lot of TikToks and we get a lot of that vegan food is full of chemicals. It's become crop-based vegan food. Where do you get your protein from? And we always get you can't live more than two months on plants, and of course we're going, well, what about us? But this thing about the chemicals, it is quite a popular argument now, so that people must be getting it from somewhere.
It's the disinformation. Make no mistake about it. Part of where we're at in our activism is an info. We're involved in an info war, the same as they had the info wars in America in relation to climate and in relation to general politics. And, you go back to the indigenous people in America, the Standing Rock, where they made a stand on the oil pipes. These are frontline activists, they're animal activists, they're climate activists, all rolled into one. We see the defenders in the Amazon who are murdered on a regular basis because they're just trying to defend their lands. And this is lands that are being taken away initially for logging, but when the land is clear felled, then it's for ranching. It is for animal farming. That's the main cause of deforestation. And these people are paying for it with their lives. And this is because of the disinformation. So we are involved in a huge info wars. And as a movement, we really need to look at these new ways that we can do activism to counteract all this. as opposed to just doing protest and reactive protests. And that's what we're trying to develop here all the time. We're trying to develop an offensive type of activism as opposed to a reactive type of protest. I don't know if I'm getting my message across on that, but
that sounds really
that's how we. Sorry.
I said that sounds really interesting. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
That's
off.
what we're trying to do with our outreach and education, be on the offensive as opposed to being defensive, or as opposed to being reactive to something happening today. Also, let's protest outside here. Let's bear witness, and that's fine. And I'm not knocking anybody's type of activism. Every voice is, every candle lit in the darkness is good. I'm not knocking that, but I think this is what we're trying to develop. We're trying to be innovative. And some long-term activists said to me, "Oh, you're new at it, but we like what you're doing. You're innovative." They recognize that. These are the people we talk to, and some people who are in our group who are themselves long-term activists, and in their day did all the the direct stuff and some stuff we can't even talk about that should remain anonymous, and on and so on and so forth. But they recognize we are trying to be innovative here, and that's where I'm coming from, to stay on the offensive, to keep putting out our story, not to be taking in what's coming down the timeline and saying, I'm against that, I'm not happy about that. We know it's all bad anyway, but make no mistake, there is a huge disinformation campaign from Big Ag to deflect from the cancer caused by their processed products to put that onto the other plant-based processed products. Processing per se is not bad. We had a wonderful webinar from a working physician here in Ireland, Dr. Ulrich Bartels. He's an obstetrician and gynecologist in Castlebar, in University College Castlebar, and he really went into detail. He said cigarette smoking, is gone down, the amount of people who smoke cigarettes, but he said lung disease is not going down. So he equates that to the consuming of animal products as well. So this is very interesting to hear people who know the data and who have access to it and know how to present it in the proper way. This is what we need. We need more strong voices. So he has given us a great insight into the health side of it, and also the webinar that James O'Donovan did on sustainability, what's happening here in Ireland. We're a population of 5 million people, and yet the slaughter rate is 120 million animals across 4 animal types. I don't want to go into too much detail because I'm aware I'm talking to other vegans and we all know the story, so we don't need to have our nose dipped in the whole thing again. And it's Christmas Day, but even at that, Ireland at that rate, I mean, it's 24 times the population. That's how many animals are perishing. Even at that, we are still not self-sufficient in the food we really need to eat. We have to import 80% of our fruit and vegetables, and the nutrient value that we import is higher than the nutrient value we export. But the Department of Agriculture and this group Teagasc would have the population here believe, oh, Ireland is feeding the world. We're not feeding the world is feeding us. Because whether you're vegan or not, you still need fruit and vegetables. So this is the lie that they keep putting out. So we have, because of our webinars, we have so much solid information now, and I would urge anyone to have a look at them, because what's happening here is happening elsewhere. There's no question about it. Just it's a smaller country. It's a kind of a petri dish, and what's happening anywhere, you can get a good look at it. So this is why I think we have a good chance of taking down speciesism here. I firmly believe it, and we're going to give it our best shot for the next 5 years and 10 years. That'll give us 4 lots of rounds of elections, and that's what we're asking for. We're asking people to bear with us, give us a chance, let us have a go at it, and come behind us, register with us, support us with education, more knowledge. If there's any experts listening, we want to hear from you. any activists. If you know anybody in Ireland who's over 18, we would love to hear from them as activists, or just people who would send in their registration details. We'll take anybody. So
another couple of years and I can do it. I was going to ask you finally, Denis, whether you're a pessimist or an optimist. I'm thinking optimist. Is that right?
Yeah, I am. I get knocked down, but I get up again. Yeah, I do. We I recently found out that Steve. What?
So you can't sing that for us.
Oh no, wabba wabba bumba, whatever the word. I recently found out that Stevie Wonder is vegan since 2016, and he has, one of the lines from his songs, the one about the Master Blaster from Hotter Than July. He says, when you're moving in the positive, your destination is the brightest star. So how about that?
That's very good. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we say one of our sayings is, join the evolution and imagine you can, and that's what we do. We're like the ants. We're going to take down this big load. We're like we're not afraid of what we're up against, and the closer you get to it, the bigger it seems. But that's only, this is real Sesame Street here. Far away, close up. That's why it looks big, because we're getting close to it. So once you're getting in there, you're getting in there to get rid of it. I have no doubt we can smash speciesism into smithereens, and we're going to have a good go at that. No question about it.